My name is Harold Thompson. I'm 68 years old, and as of last Saturday, I'm officially retired. 45 years. That's how long I spent working in the same company. I started in the warehouse, hauling crates and cleaning bathrooms. Ended up in logistics management, which is a fancy way of saying I made sure everyone else did their jobs on time. I wasn't rich. I wasn't famous. But I was dependable. And I provided. I've got 2 kids. Well, 2 adult children now. Daniel, 35, lives in Ohio and runs a construction business. He's a good man, steady and quiet like me. And then there's my daughter, Lisa. Lisa is 32, smart as a whip, and has champagne taste on a soda budget. Don't get me wrong, I love my daughter. But she's always had a sense of entitlement that I just couldn't shake off. Like the world owed her something just for showing up. And me? I was the bank of Dad. The tuition loans? I co-signed and paid most of it. The first car? I bought it outright. The apartment deposit? I wired the money the same day she asked. The countless emergencies? Covered. I told myself, she's just finding her way. But her way always involved me pulling out my wallet. Now retirement. This was supposed to be the big celebration. I'd imagined it 100 ways. A peaceful dinner, a toast, maybe some tears. Instead, I got a roast. The party was nice at first. My co-workers threw it at a local restaurant. Nothing fancy, just warm and welcoming. They clapped, they laughed, they shared stories about my younger years. I even got a cake shaped like a toolbox, very on brand. Then came the speeches. Lisa got up, wine glass in hand, and said the thing that started it all. Well, she began, with that grin she wears when she's about to make a scene. Hope you saved something, Dad. Retirement's expensive, especially with all the help you gave out over the years. People laughed. I didn't. She thought she was being funny. But that moment, it felt like 45 years of hard work and quiet sacrifices were being reduced to a joke. My co-workers looked at me, some chuckled awkwardly. Others stared down at their plates. I sat there, hands folded, heart beating like a drum. I didn't say anything yet. But something inside me cracked. Maybe it was age. Maybe it was the sting of public embarrassment. Maybe it was the knowledge that I had given so much, and was now being mocked for it. Whatever it was, I decided that I wasn't going to let this slide. I waited until the applause died down and the dessert came out. I stood up, raised my glass and said, "Thank you all for being here. It means a lot. I've worked most of my life with some of the finest folks around. And I've never been one for speeches, but I do want to say a few words." I looked at Lisa. "Lisa, you brought up something interesting. About all the help over the years. I'm glad you reminded me." People laughed again, lightly this time. My tone was calm, measured. But my eyes stayed locked on hers. I pulled a folded paper from my jacket pocket. Thick paper. Several pages. I'd brought it just in case. For years, I kept records, just a habit of mine. I tracked every loan, every emergency Venmo, every check I wrote. "Since you joked about it, I thought it'd be fun to actually tally it up," I said. Her smile froze. I unfolded the spreadsheet and began to read. First semester of college, $8,950. Spring semester, $9,200. Textbooks, $1,150. First car, $14,000. Repairs over the next 3 years, $3,600. Security deposit on your first apartment, $1,200. 3 months of rent when you lost your job, $3,000. Credit card debt payoff, $4,700. Emergency dental surgery, $2,300. Plane tickets home, 5 times, $2,800. The room went silent. Total? I said, flipping to the last page. $82 for 72.18. Not including the interest I never charged. Lisa stared at me, red creeping into her cheeks. And now that I'm retired, I added, I figured it's time to close accounts. So here's your bill. I walked over and placed the paper in front of her. Her hands trembled. Of course, I continued. I'm not asking for it back yet. But I wanted you to see it. To understand that everything you dismissed as Dad just helping out came with a cost. Not just financial, emotional, time, energy. And I paid it all, without ever asking for a thing in return. Until now, apparently. My coworkers were wide-eyed. No one moved. A few looked like they wanted to clap, but weren't sure if it was appropriate. I sat back down. Lisa didn't say a word for the rest of the night. And that's when it hit me. Maybe for the first time in her life, she realized I wasn't just her safety net. I was a person. One who had finally had enough. The morning after the party, I woke up earlier than usual. Old habits die hard. 45 years of waking up before the sun. And even with retirement officially stamped on my calendar, my body didn't know how to sleep in. The house was quiet, too quiet. No phone calls, no beeping email alerts, no calendar reminders telling me to check in with suppliers or reroute deliveries. I poured myself a cup of coffee black, just like I always took it. The events of the previous night played on a loop in my head. Lisa's joke, the spreadsheet, the silence. I wondered if I'd gone too far. Was it petty? Was it justified? Then I thought about all the times I said yes when I wanted to say no. All the weekends I missed out on fishing or golf because I was fixing her car, co-signing another lease, or wiring over another emergency $500 that I knew I'd never see again. And suddenly, I didn't feel bad. I felt free. Around 9 a.m., the phone rang. I didn't even need to look at the caller ID. I knew who it was. Lisa. I picked up after the second ring. Dad, she said. Her voice was cautious, almost shaky. Yes. You really kept track of everything? I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch a bit, just enough to let her feel the weight of the question. Yes, I did. Every cent. Why, she asked. I mean, I didn't know you were counting. I wasn't, I said simply. Not at first. But after a while, I realized I needed to. Not because I expected repayment, but because it helped me remember how much I was giving, and how little I was receiving in return. She was quiet. I took a slow sip of coffee. I guess I just thought, you were always gonna help. That's what dads do, right? She finally said. Sure, I replied. Dads help. But daughters shouldn't take that for granted. You made a joke last night about me saving money. What you didn't know is, I was saving for you. Always for you. That hit her. I could hear her breathing change, like she was holding back something. Anger, maybe guilt. I didn't mean to make you feel unappreciated. I believe that, I said. But that doesn't mean I didn't feel it. I've been your fallback for years, Lisa. And you've treated me more like a financial institution than a father. Okay, I get it, she snapped, the first sign of her usual fire coming through. You've made your point. No, Lisa, I said firmly. This isn't just about the money. This is about respect. You've treated my help like an obligation. And last night, you made a joke that embarrassed me in front of people I've worked beside for decades. I heard her inhale sharply. You're right, she finally said. I was trying to be funny, but I see now that it wasn't. For a second, I thought she might apologize. A real one, from the heart. Instead, she said, so what now? Are you actually expecting me to pay that money back? I looked out the window at my quiet backyard. The grass was long. The shed needed painting. Retirement had just begun. And I suddenly saw how much peace I could have if I wasn't constantly being dragged back into someone else's chaos. I don't know, I said. Maybe. Maybe not all of it. But I do know one thing. Things are going to be different now. I'm not your bank anymore. You don't mean that. I do. Silence again. I knew she wasn't used to boundaries. I'd never set any before. But I was too old now to be anyone's doormat. I didn't work 45 years just to be insulted with a smirk over dessert. I love you, Lisa, I added. But love isn't a blank check. That was when the call ended. Not with yelling, not with tears. Just quiet. A pause. And then a click. I stared at the phone for a long moment. Then I set it down, picked up my coffee again, and walked out to the backyard. I stood there in the sunlight, letting the warmth hit my skin. And I felt something new for the first time in years. Boundaries. And they felt good. Later that afternoon, I went back to that spreadsheet. Not because I wanted to add more to it, but because I wanted to delete something. I removed the title Loans to Lisa, and changed it to Gifts I Gave Without Thanks. It was my record. My closure. But that didn't mean the bill wasn't real. It still existed. Not for the money, but for the message. A message that I was no longer going to be taken for granted. Before we go any further, let me take you back to where this all really started. Not at the retirement party. Not even with Lisa's first request for help. No, it started long ago, when Lisa was still a child. Maybe 5, maybe 6. She'd come home from school with tears in her eyes because another kid got a new backpack with glittery straps and she didn't. So I did what a lot of dads might do. I took her out that weekend and bought the fanciest, sparkliest backpack we could find. She smiled so big that day, you'd have thought I bought her the world. That was the first time I said yes when I really should have said, not this time. And it didn't stop there. When she was a teenager and didn't get the part she wanted in the school play, she said her outfit wasn't good enough. I took her shopping. When she failed her driving test the first time, I let her practice in my car for hours. Even when she clipped the mirror and laughed like it was no big deal. When she was in college and ran short on rent, I wired money without question. Each time I told myself, she's going through something. Just this once. But just this once became a pattern. Lisa grew up thinking the world owed her comfort. And I let her believe that. I taught her that no matter what, Dad would come through. That if she spent recklessly, I'd cover it. If she made a mistake, I'd clean it up. I wasn't just enabling her. I was protecting her from learning the very lessons life had drilled into me. You see, when I was her age, nobody bailed me out. My father passed away when I was 16, and my mom worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. I paid for community college by working at a hardware store during the day and cleaning offices at night. My first car was a beat-up Chevy Nova with no AC and a radio that only worked if you hit it twice. Everything I had I earned. And I wanted to give Lisa a life where she didn't have to scrape and claw like I did. But in doing that, I stole something from her, resilience. And it wasn't just the money. It was how she came to see me. Not as a man, not even as a father, but as a permanent safety net. A background figure. Someone who showed up when she needed him, then faded into silence once the crisis passed. She never asked how I was doing. She never called just to talk, only to ask for something. Even when my back went out 2 years ago and I was laid up for weeks, she sent a single text. Hope you're okay. Can you still co-sign for my refinance? No, how are you healing? No visit. Just business as usual. And still I said yes. Because that's what I thought love looked like. Providing. Solving. Carrying burdens. But there comes a point when carrying someone else means losing pieces of yourself. I was tired. Not just from work, not just from age, but from being invisible unless I had something to offer. That's why that night at the party felt like a final slap in the face. Lisa's joke wasn't just rude. It was a summary of everything I had allowed her to believe. That her father was a fool with deep pockets and no spine. And it stung. Not because it was untrue, but because in many ways it was. That morning, after I got off the phone with her, I did something I hadn't done in a while. I sat down with an old photo album. There she was, my little girl in overalls, playing with Legos on the living room floor. Her first day of school, missing a front tooth but grinning with pride. Her high school graduation, beaming in her cap and gown as I stood beside her, teary-eyed and proud. I didn't give her all that help because I was weak. I gave it because I loved her with all my heart. But love, real love, isn't about never saying no. It's about teaching someone how to stand on their own. It's about letting them fall so they know how to get back up. And I had failed at that. Retirement, for me, wasn't just an end to work. It was a chance to reset everything. My time, my peace, my boundaries. Lisa might never pay back that $82,472.18. But that wasn't the point anymore. The point was, from now on she'd know. Dad keeps receipts, not just on paper but in his heart. And he's done pretending they don't matter. The Monday after the party, I stopped by Joe's Diner like I always did. It's a little spot on Main Street, run by a guy who's been serving eggs and sarcasm since the 1970s. Every morning, a few of us regulars, mostly retired guys, claim the same corner booth, complain about the weather, talk about grandkids, and nurse cups of coffee like it's a sacred ritual. I slid into my usual seat, and before I could even order, Frank leaned across the table and grinned. "So Harold," he said, chuckling, "I heard you billed your daughter at your own retirement party. You pulling our leg or what?" I smiled and pulled the spreadsheet from my jacket pocket, folded neatly, still crisp from the night before. "I wasn't joking," I said, unfolding it slowly and sliding it across the table. The booth went silent. I could hear the hiss of the griddle and the soft clink of cutlery around us. Frank picked up the pages, started reading, then whistled. "You actually kept track of all this?" he asked, wide-eyed. "Every cent. Down to the penny," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "Years of it." Jim leaned in next. "Textbooks, rent, dental bills, plane tickets. Damn, Harold, she owed you a down payment on a house and didn't even know it." "She knew," I said quietly. "She just didn't care." We all sat there for a moment, letting that sink in. For once, no one had a snarky comeback. No one made a joke. Because they understood something deeper was going on. Frank finally broke the silence. "Honestly, I wish I'd had your spine. My son just bought a $70,000 truck with money he was saving for a mortgage. Guess where that money came from?" "Let me guess," I said. "You." "Bingo," he grunted. "You think he even called me to thank me last Father's Day?" "Nah. He sent me a meme about grill dads." Everyone laughed. Bittersweet laughter. The kind you only hear from men who've been slowly erased by the people they raised. That's the thing people don't talk about with parenthood, especially fathers of our generation. We were raised to provide, not to complain. Taught that love is shown through action, not words. We fix what's broken, pay what's due, and keep our mouths shut about the emotional toll. But you do that long enough, and eventually, your kids start thinking your love is automatic. Like a faucet. Always running. Always available. Until one day you shut it off, and they act like you're the one being unfair. I told the guys at the table. It wasn't about humiliating her. It was about showing her the truth, something I should have done a long time ago. Jim nodded. "So what now?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "She hasn't called again since that morning." But I meant what I said. No more handouts. No more bailing her out just because she says the right thing. Frank handed the spreadsheet back, looking at me differently than before. "You know, that took guts. Most of us just take the hits and keep going. You stood up." "It only took 68 years, I said, laughing. But truthfully, it didn't feel like bravery. It felt like necessity. After breakfast, I went home and looked around the house. It was quiet, too quiet sometimes, but I realized it was finally mine. Not a pit stop for someone in crisis. Not a revolving door of favors. Just mine. I pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Not a spreadsheet this time, something more personal. A list of things I wanted to do now that I was retired. Simple things. Fix the shed roof. Drive down to visit Daniel for a weekend. Take that fishing trip I kept postponing. Plant tomatoes in the backyard like I always said I would. And at the very top I wrote, "Reclaim peace." Because that's what this was really about. Not revenge, not proving a point. Peace. The kind you only get when you stop letting people drain your soul with a smile. I put the spreadsheet away after that. Tucked it in my desk drawer. I didn't need to wave it around anymore. Its job was done. It started a conversation that should have happened years ago. That night, I cooked myself a steak, opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving since my 60th birthday, and sat outside watching the stars come out. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like someone's backup plan. I felt like a man who had finally said, "Enough." That evening, after the steak and the stars, my phone rang again. I glanced down, expecting maybe Lisa again, or maybe nothing at all. But this time it was Daniel. My son. The quiet one. The one who never asked for much. He doesn't call often. Not because he doesn't care, but because he's one of those people who only speaks when there's something worth saying. And when Daniel calls at 8:45 on a weeknight, it usually means something's on his mind. I answered, "Hey son." There was a pause. Then, "Hey dad. I heard what happened at the party." His tone wasn't mocking. It wasn't even curious. It was thoughtful. Careful. "Oh yeah," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I wasn't there, but Lisa called me yesterday. She's well, let's just say she's not too happy." "I figured," I said. "She didn't exactly thank me for the spreadsheet." Daniel chuckled softly. "Yeah, she said you brought out a ledger and read off every penny she ever cost you." "It wasn't every penny," I said. "Just the big ones." "She called it cruel," Daniel added. I nodded to myself. She would. Then Daniel said something that stopped me cold. I thought it was brave. I didn't say anything at first. "I mean it, Dad," he continued. "I've watched you bend over backward for her for years. And I always wondered how long you'd keep doing it before you snapped. I'm just glad you finally stood up for yourself." I sat up straighter. "You saw all of that?" "Of course I did," he said. "You think she called me because she wanted advice?" "No. She called me because I'm the only one who's never told her, yes, just to shut her up." That was true. Daniel was always firm with Lisa. Growing up, they were close in age but miles apart in temperament. He didn't fall for the drama. He didn't get guilt into helping her move apartments 3 times in 1 year. He didn't send her money when she went on spontaneous yoga retreats or racked up charges for online shopping therapy. "I used to think you were just trying to keep the peace," Daniel went on. "But peace isn't silence, Dad. Peace is respect. And she hasn't respected you in years." That hit me in the chest. I'd been mistaking silence for harmony, letting her walk all over me so I wouldn't rock the boat. But Daniel was right. There's no peace in being invisible. "She said you embarrassed her," Daniel added. "She embarrassed me first," I replied calmly. "And I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because I'm tired of pretending I don't notice the pattern." "I know you did," Daniel said. "And I wanted to call and say, I'm proud of you." That stopped me. "Proud of me?" I repeated, unsure how to respond. "Yeah. For setting a boundary. For saying enough. I know it probably wasn't easy. But sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone is make them face themselves." I didn't speak for a few moments. My throat tightened a little. Daniel, my son who rarely showed emotion, was saying the very words I'd been longing to hear. Words I never thought would come from either of my kids. "Thanks, son," I finally said. "That means more than you know." Then he surprised me again. "Listen, why don't you come up for the weekend? Bring some of those old photo albums. We can barbecue, sit on the porch. Just talk." I smiled. "That sounds real nice," I said. "Real nice." After we hung up, I sat with that conversation for a long time. It wasn't just about Lisa anymore. It was about the bigger picture. About how easy it is, as a parent, to forget that you deserve to be treated with dignity. That giving love doesn't mean sacrificing your self-worth. And most of all, I realized something. Lisa wasn't the only one who needed to learn a lesson. I did too. I needed to stop measuring my value by how useful I was to others. I needed to remember that love isn't just what we give. It's also what we receive. And if the love you're getting back is conditional, manipulative, or absent altogether, then it's not really love. It's dependence. It's control. It's habit. And I was done with all 3. So I packed a small bag, pulled out those old photo albums Daniel asked for, and jotted down a short note to leave on the kitchen table, just in case Lisa decided to drop by unannounced again. It read, "Out of town for the weekend. Spending time with someone who respects me. If you'd like to talk, you know where to find me. But if you're calling for money, call someone else." It was the first note I'd written to her that wasn't a check. And it felt damn good. I left early Friday morning for Daniel's place. The drive was about 4 hours through quiet country roads and open stretches of highway. I didn't listen to the radio. I didn't take any calls. I just rolled the windows down and let the late summer wind fill the cab of my old pickup. I hadn't made a trip like this in years. Just for me, with no schedule, no deadline, no urgent request to fix, sign, pay, or rescue. I almost didn't recognize the feeling. It was freedom. Daniel lived just outside Cincinnati in a cozy house with a wraparound porch and a big yard where his dog, Ranger, ran around like he owned the place. When I pulled up, Ranger came charging over like I was his long-lost best friend. Daniel was close behind, flipping burgers on the grill, grinning like he'd been waiting for this all month. "Dad," he shouted over the sizzle of meat. "You made it." "Didn't think I'd miss a free meal," I replied, stepping out of the truck. We hugged, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly welcome. No awkward tension, no hidden agenda. Just a father and son enjoying each other's company. Inside, Daniel's wife, Marissa, was setting the table. She smiled when she saw me. "We're glad you're here, Harold. Daniel said you two needed some quality time." "We really do," I said, meaning it. Over the weekend, we did everything and nothing. We sat on the porch with cold beers, watching the sunset. We flipped through old photo albums, laughing at Daniel's high school mullet and Lisa's phase of dressing like a pop star. We grilled steaks, played cards, and talked late into the night. And slowly, as the hours passed, I realized just how much of my life had been spent bracing for the next disaster. The next call. The next favor. The next guilt trip. But here? There was none of that. No one needed anything from me except my presence. And for once, that felt like enough. On Saturday night, Daniel brought up something unexpected. "Do you remember when Lisa was 15 and you paid for her first summer camp?" he asked. I nodded. "Of course. That place up in Wisconsin. She begged to go. She told me once that was the best summer of her life," he said. "She said you wrote her letters every week. She kept them, you know." I raised my eyebrows. "She did. Yeah. She still has them in a shoebox." That stopped me. I had almost forgotten those letters. I used to write little jokes, draw silly cartoons in the margins, and end each one with, "Love you always, Dad." I hadn't thought about those letters in years. I certainly didn't think she'd kept them. "She doesn't say it," Daniel added, "but I think she does appreciate what you've done for her. She just doesn't know how to express it." I exhaled slowly. "I'm not looking for a thank you anymore," I said. "But I do want respect. That's the new bar." Daniel nodded. "That's fair." Later that night, I sat out on the porch alone while everyone else went to bed. The stars were bright, and the air was still. I thought about those letters. About all the moments I'd shared with Lisa that had once been warm. Before the expectations, the money, the pressure. Maybe those letters were proof that there was still something good between us. Maybe not. But I knew this. I wasn't going to keep bending myself into knots for someone who only saw my worth in dollars. If Lisa wanted to rebuild our relationship, it would have to be built on something stronger, mutual respect. Not guilt. Not obligation. And not history. On Sunday afternoon, as I packed up to head home, Daniel walked me to the truck. "You know," he said, "I think she might come around. Eventually." "Maybe," I said. "But even if she doesn't, I've made peace with it." He nodded. "Proud of you, Dad. You're finally living for yourself." I patted him on the shoulder. Took me long enough. As I drove away, I didn't feel heavy like I used to after family visits. I didn't feel drained or frustrated, or like I needed to brace myself for another fire to put out. I felt rested. And more importantly, I felt like I was finally choosing myself. It was Thursday afternoon, just 5 days after the party, when I saw Lisa's car pull into my driveway. I'd just finished trimming the hedges out front, wearing my old ball cap and garden gloves, smelling like sweat and grass clippings. I froze when I saw her get out of the car, still in her business casual heels and blazer, sunglasses on like she was walking into a negotiation. Part of me hoped she was here to apologize. Another part expected more of the same. Excuses, tears, a sudden emergency. She didn't bring flowers. No card. No smile. Just her purse slung over one shoulder, and her phone clutched like a lifeline. I met her on the porch before she could knock. "Hey," she said. Not warm, not cold, just neutral. "Hey," I replied, equally steady. "I wanted to talk." I nodded. "All right. Let's sit." We sat on the porch swing, me on one end, her on the other, a chasm of quiet stretching between us. The air was still. A breeze moved the wind chimes, but they didn't make a sound. Lisa broke the silence first. "So the spreadsheet." "Yeah. I guess I didn't realize how much it all added up," she said, crossing her legs. "I mean, I knew you helped me out, but I didn't think it was 80-something grand. 82,472.18, I corrected calmly. She rolled her eyes. "Right. That." I waited. "I talked to Daniel," she added. "He said you're setting boundaries now." "I am." She looked out at the yard, chewing her bottom lip. "It just feels kind of harsh. You always helped before. Now suddenly it's a bill and a cold shoulder." I looked at her, steady. "It's not a cold shoulder. It's a closed door to the bank of Dad. That branch has shut down." That got a small, bitter laugh out of her. "You really think I just used you all these years?" I didn't answer right away. I let the question float between us like a balloon, waiting to pop. "I think you never stopped to ask yourself what it was costing me," I said finally. "You just assumed I'd always be there with a checkbook and a smile, even when you joked at my retirement dinner that I'd better have saved something. That told me all I needed to know." She sighed. "It was a joke, Dad. It wasn't funny. I didn't mean it that way." "But you said it that way. In front of my coworkers. My friends. The people who saw me work hard for decades. And you turned it into a punchline." She winced. And then finally her voice cracked. "I don't know how to fix this." I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time in a long while, she didn't look like the confident, demanding adult she pretended to be. She looked like a tired little girl, confused and a bit ashamed. "You start," I said, "by not asking me to fix it for you." Her eyes welled up. She didn't cry, not fully, but I saw the tears sitting there, heavy and unsure. "I'm not asking for money," she said, almost whispering. "Good," I replied, "because I'm not offering." She blinked, then slowly nodded. "But I do want to do better," she said. "I want to earn back some of what I took for granted." Now that was different. That was the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. "Then start by showing up without needing something," I said. "Call me just to talk. Come by and help with the yard. Invite me to dinner where I don't have to foot the bill. Start small. Start with respect." She swallowed hard. "I can try. That's all I ask." We sat in silence for a moment, watching the sun sink lower in the sky. The tension slowly leaked out of the air like a balloon deflating. Eventually she stood up. "I've got to get back to the office. But thanks for letting me talk." I stood with her. "You're welcome, Lisa." She hesitated, then reached out and gave me a quick, awkward hug. It wasn't warm, but it was a start. She walked to her car without saying anything else. I didn't wave. I didn't call after her. I just watched as she drove off. I didn't know if this was a turning point, or just a flicker of guilt passing through. But for once, I wasn't going to chase her to find out. The ball was in her court now. After Lisa left that day, I sat on the porch a long time. Longer than I'd meant to. I watched the shadows stretch across the yard, the sun dipping behind the big oak tree that's older than both my kids combined. I listened to the cicadas buzz and the neighborhood kids ride their bikes down the sidewalk, giggling like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. And I felt peace. It wasn't the dramatic kind. No big swelling music. No teary victory. Just a quiet kind of peace. The kind you feel when you've told the truth and let it stand on its own. Because here's the thing they don't tell you when you grow up always being the provider. Always being the one who fixes things. Saying yes feels noble at first. But after a while, it starts to feel like surrender. And saying no? That feels like guilt at first. Like failure. Like betrayal. But then eventually, it starts to feel like freedom. For years, I thought my job as a father was to make life easier for my kids. I thought that meant stepping in whenever things got tough, making sacrifices without complaint, solving problems before they exploded. But looking back, I see what that actually did. It shielded Lisa from the consequences of her own decisions. It gave her a shortcut every time things got uncomfortable. And worse, it taught her that love meant never being held accountable. And that wasn't love. That was dysfunction, wrapped in a well-meaning bow. The truth? I had to relearn what love looked like, especially now that I was retired. I had to ask myself, what does loving someone actually mean when they're grown? When they're capable? When they've taken and still expect more? Because love isn't about giving endlessly until there's nothing left of you. It's about giving wisely and sometimes not at all. It's about boundaries. And that week, for the first time, I saw what boundaries could actually give back to me. Lisa hadn't called again since that porch visit. And honestly, that was okay. She needed time. So did I. But other things started happening. For one, I started sleeping better. No more lying awake wondering if I was going to get another late night. Can you wire me $600? Text. No more bracing myself for awkward Thanksgiving dinners where I pretended everything was fine just to keep the peace. No more checking my account balance like I was waiting for it to betray me. I took walks. Real walks. Not rushing to the store or pacing around while on hold with some customer service rep trying to fix one of Lisa's problems. Just walking for the sake of it. I even went down to the community center and joined a woodworking class. Me and 7 other retired guys trying not to lose our thumbs while turning old pallets into birdhouses. It felt good to do something with my hands that wasn't writing checks. One afternoon mid-sanding, I got a message from Marissa, Daniel's wife. She sent a photo of him grilling in the backyard, apron on, flipping burgers with Ranger sitting nearby. The caption said, "He's been talking about your visit all week. Can't wait to have you back." That made me smile. A real one. The kind that makes your eyes crinkle. Because here's something else I realized. When you start saying no to the people who drain you, you make room for the people who fill you back up. Lisa had drained me for years. But Daniel? He never asked for much. And now that I had time and energy and no financial fires to put out, I had space for him. And space for me. I started sketching out plans for a small garden behind the house. Nothing too fancy. Just tomatoes, cucumbers, and maybe some peppers. I'd always said I'd do it when I had time. Well, now I did. And every time I planted a seed or pulled a weed, I thought to myself, this is what it feels like to build something that grows without taking more than it gives. That's what I want now. Growth that doesn't cost me peace. Relationships that don't come with an invoice. Moments that don't feel like transactions. I wasn't just retired from work. I was retired from being used. And every no I said from that moment forward wasn't just for Lisa, it was for me. For the man who worked 45 years and finally decided to live the rest of his life on his own terms. About 2 weeks had passed since Lisa showed up on my porch. I hadn't heard from her since. No calls. No texts. Not even a forwarded meme or happy Sunday chain message. And honestly, I wasn't sure if that was good or bad. But one Saturday afternoon, as I was setting up my little garden bed in the backyard, trying to figure out whether tomatoes needed full sun or partial shade, I heard the gate creak open. I turned around, and there she was. Lisa. Not in a hurry. Not in heels. No phone in her hand this time. Just her. In jeans and a hoodie, hair tied back, holding a small paper bag. Hey, she said, hesitating at the edge of the garden. Hey, I replied cautiously. I brought you something, she said, holding out the bag. I wiped my hands on my shirt and took it. Inside was a small mason jar of homemade strawberry jam. Store-bought strawberries, probably. But I could tell she'd actually made it herself. I've been trying to cook more at home, she added quickly. Less takeout. Fewer deliveries. I nodded slowly. Thanks. She stood there for a moment, shuffling her feet like she was standing in front of a school principal. I've been thinking a lot since the party, she said. About what you said. About everything. I stayed quiet. I'd learned not to interrupt these moments. I used to think you were just being dramatic, she admitted, staring at the ground. Always talking about sacrifice and hard work. I thought, that's just what parents do. I never stopped to think about what it cost you, or how it felt. Her voice cracked a little. I didn't realize how entitled I sounded that night. Saying that at your retirement dinner. That wasn't just a bad joke. It was me showing my whole mindset, wasn't it? I gave a slow nod. Yeah, it was. She nodded back, eyes glistening. I was wrong. And there it was. Not the typical sorry if I upset you. Not I didn't mean it that way. Not a defense masked as regret. Just I was wrong. I hadn't heard those words from her since she was 12 and got caught sneaking into the movies with her friends. She took a step closer. I know I can't pay you back what you gave me, she said softly. And I'm not just talking about money. I mean time, energy, patience. Stuff I didn't even know I was draining from you. But I want to try to rebuild something. Not based on you rescuing me, but just being your daughter. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I finally sighed and gestured to the empty planter beside me. Hand me that bag of compost, would you? She blinked. What? If you're sticking around, you might as well help me plant some tomatoes. A beat passed. Then she smiled. A real one. She dropped her purse on the grass, rolled up her sleeves, and grabbed the compost. We worked side by side for a while. No dramatic music, no confessions, no lecture from me. Just dirt under our nails, sweat on our foreheads, and the start of something that felt new. Every so often, we'd bump elbows. Once, she laughed when I nearly dropped a shovel on my foot. I tossed her a teasing glare, and she stuck her tongue out like she was a teenager again. At one point, she paused and looked around the yard. I forgot how quiet it is here, she said. It's peaceful, I replied. She nodded. I think I needed a little of that. We didn't talk about the spreadsheet. We didn't need to. She knew. And for once, I believed she cared. As the sun began to dip behind the trees, I stood up and wiped my hands. All right, I said. We'll see if these things grow. She looked at me and smiled. Kind of like us, huh? I raised an eyebrow. Don't get sappy on me now. She laughed, and it felt like the first real one in a long time. As she packed up to leave, she paused at the gate. Next week, she said. Can I come by again? Maybe help you with the peppers. I gave a small nod. Sure. Bring your own gloves next time. She winked. Deal. She left without asking for anything. No favor. No check. No problem to solve. Just a goodbye and a see you next week. And as I watched her walk away, I realized something. Maybe giving someone a bill is harsh. But sometimes it's the only way they learn what things actually cost. And maybe, just maybe, it teaches them to value the things money can't buy. The next few weeks passed with an odd sense of calm. Lisa came by once a week, just like she said she would. She brought gloves the second time, bright purple ones, like gardening was now her new hobby. She never asked for anything. She even started bringing sandwiches, and once, she brought me a bottle of iced tea with a post-it on it that said, "No favors, just flavor." It was cute, A little on the nose. But it made me smile. She was trying. For the first time in a long time. She was putting in effort without expecting a payout. And I was trying too. Trying not to hold the past against her. Trying to let this new version of her show up without judging it by the old one. But just when I thought things were settling, the past came knocking, literally. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was halfway through fixing the hinge on the screen door when I heard a knock on the front door. I walked over, wiped my hands, opened it. And there stood Martha, my ex-wife. I hadn't seen her in nearly 4 years. She looked exactly the same. Graceful, put together, hair perfect, eyes sharp as ever. "Mind if I come in?" she asked. I hesitated. "Depends. Is this about Lisa?" She gave a small, knowing smile. "It always is, isn't it?" I stepped aside and let her in. She walked in like she still owned the place. Like muscle memory brought her through the foyer, to the kitchen, and straight to the same stool she used to sit on every morning with her coffee. "Lisa called me," she said. "Told me about the retirement party. And your spreadsheet." Ah, so that's what this was. I leaned against the counter. "She tell you what was on it?" She told me she was embarrassed. Said you laid out every dollar, every loan, every mistake. She embarrassed because of the truth, I said. I didn't exaggerate a single thing. Martha sighed. "I'm not saying she didn't need a wake-up call. God knows I've coddled her too much too. But I am saying, maybe it didn't need to be public. You could have handled it quietly." I crossed my arms. Quiet is what I did for 15 years. Quiet is how she got the idea that I was a bottomless bank account. That she could joke about my money in front of people who came to celebrate my life's work. She looked at me then. Really looked at me. And for a brief moment her eyes softened. "I didn't realize how much she leaned on you," she said. "I knew about the tuition. I didn't know about the car. Or the emergency credit cards. Or the rent help." "That's because you never asked," I replied calmly. "You just assumed I'd handle it." And I did. Until I couldn't. She looked down at the counter for a second, then back up. "I came here today because I wanted to tell you that I think you did the right thing," she said. "But I also came to warn you." "Warn me?" "Lisa's trying," she said. "I can see it. But she's not used to earning things. She's used to you stepping in. That's a hard habit to break. Especially if life throws her another curveball." I didn't reply. Because I knew she was right. Martha stood up, dusted off invisible lint from her coat, and walked toward the door. She paused with her hand on the knob. "Just be careful. Don't let a few nice sandwiches and a couple gardening afternoons blind you. Change is slow. Slippery. Sometimes temporary." And with that she left. I stood there a long time, just listening to the screen door flap behind her. Martha hadn't said anything I didn't already know. But hearing it from her made it real in a different way. Lisa was trying. But effort didn't always mean permanence. That weekend I told Lisa to skip our garden day. I needed space. Not because I was angry, but because I wanted time to think, to remember that people don't change overnight. I sat out back, watering the small green sprouts starting to peek up from the soil. Tomato leaves, a few inches tall. A sign of patience. That's what this would need too. Not just hope. Not just forgiveness. But patience with eyes open. Because love isn't a gift you hand over blindly anymore. At my age, love is something you offer carefully, cautiously, with the wisdom of every time it's been taken for granted before. And I was learning, finally, to love with a boundary.